I'm Tom Baker, this is Chasing Cars, and while it was a sad day when Volkswagen decided to eliminate all of its Golf wagons, including the Golf R, all of its Passat and Arteon wagons from the Australian lineup, there was a silver lining because cousin brand Cupra saw the gap in the market. There's a small but dedicated number of Aussies that still like fast wagons, and I've got one next to me. This is the Cupra Leon Sportstourer, which is under strong consideration to come to Australia in two flavours. A 180 kilowatt plug-in hybrid with about 50 k's of range, that's what I've got with me here, and a 221 kilowatt model with all-wheel drive, a feature you can't get on any Leon hatch, and I've spent the last couple of hours driving that model as well. Is that one a Golf R replacement? Kind of, but not entirely. Today I'm going to take you through a review of the Leon wagon. We'll check out the interior, the back seat, the big boot, and then we'll take it for a drive to see whether this is a quick estate you should be putting on your shortlist. But before we get started, hit subscribe below. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by Budget Direct. Here in the Leon, the front seat is very similar to the hatches that we've reviewed on the channel before, including the VZe plug-in hybrid, which I thought was potentially the best Leon taken on balance. And that might be the case for the wagon as well, but I'll wait until we drive the thing to let you know. So what are we looking at here? Well, this one's left-hand drive, of course, because we're in Europe. Our steering wheel would be on the correct side, but we have that sort of classic Cupra interior design theme, which is pretty crisp, pretty clean, and dotted with copper highlights, which is this brand's hero color. It's a nice cabin, it's fairly well organized. The steering wheel is good to hold with perforation and physical controls, which is great. You always know what you're doing. And then you look over here to a touchscreen, big cutout for a touchscreen. This European spec car has a smaller display, but I think in Australia all the cars would get the 12-inch screen as standard. You do get wireless smartphone mirroring. Beats audio is available in the plug-in hybrid now, at least in the hatch, so I expect that it would also come to the wagon. The screen itself is quite well organized, although the climate controls are within the display. There are some sliders down here that are not illuminated, but that will be fixed at the facelift of the Leon. Now, this car would be set to arrive in Australia in mid to late 2024, perhaps even in facelifted form as the wagon, so we'll have to wait and see. You also get a digital driver display up here, and storage is good. Big space down here, wireless charging, various spots to stash everyday clutter. Big door bins, although they're not flock lined, but material quality in general is pretty nice in the Leon. Perhaps not quite as good as a Golf Mark 8, but still up there and beyond most mainstream rivals. Now the seats themselves, these ones are awesome, but these are performance seats optional in Europe that we can't have in Australia because this seat doesn't have a side airbag and you can't do that back home. So we actually get a slightly less supportive seat in Australia, but it's still a pretty good one. And the benefit is the Aussie seat has electric adjustment and lumbar, whereas these are manual and completely fixed and a little less supportive on a long drive in actual fact. The big difference with the Leon ST wagon is of course the back seat, much more spacious than the hatch. You can see the legroom I've got at 6 foot is awesome behind my own driving position. Tow room's good, headroom is acceptable even though this car has the panoramic sunroof, and you will get 3 people across in a pinch. It is more of that sort of 4 adults, maybe 3 kids across if you really had to, but I reckon you'll get 2 child seats back here without too much of a problem. We do have a stretched wheelbase when compared to the hatch. We've got a flip down armrest, a ski pass-through, very useful in particular in the all-wheel drive 221 kilowatt model, but the plug-in hybrid is front-wheel drive, sufficient for most people, and the view out is good. Big windows, clear view out the front, so I reckon kids will be quite happy back here. Moving around the back of the Leon Sportstourer now, this one is finished in matte petrol blue, probably Cupra's main communications color, but there would be a full range of colors available on this car, just like the hatchback. But of course, the difference to the hatch is the massive load capacity. I think this would become Cupra's biggest boot. I'll put the literage on the screen now, but there's room for a couple of big suitcases. You do have a nicely damped cargo cover there as well. You've got the ability to remotely fold down the back seats, and then underneath the boot floor, no spare here in the plug-in hybrid. That's where the battery goes, so instead you've got a Tyre repair kit. Not ideal, but definitely the case that we're finding on a lot more of the cars we're reviewing now. And we do have a button here to close that power tailgate, and then you take in some of the design details like the nice full width light strip at the back of the Leon, which of course you're going to recognize at night. And the plug-in hybrid has these little copper sort of fake exhausts, which look all right. So what is the Leon Sportstourer like to drive, and is this wagon a product that Cupra Australia should really concentrate on bringing to our market this early in the piece? Because I've got to remember, I need to take my wagon fanboy cap off, my wagon owner cap off for a moment and think about this car from the perspective of whether it does family duties well. And I'm happy to do that. I'm also happy to report that it does indeed, and the Leon Sportstourer is going to suit families more than the Formentor. The Formentor is the most popular Cupra right now, and for good reason. I ran one as a long-termer, and it's extremely likable as SUVs go, but the Leon is just that little bit better. So what are we dealing with mechanically here? Well, the Leon Sportstourer is a bit like a Golf wagon. It's a bit like an Octavia wagon, but it's not the same as those cars. It does share the MQB Evo platform with the Golf Mark 8 and the current gen Octavia, but Cupra has extensively tuned this platform to make the car drive like a Cupra. So it's certainly not a carbon copy of an Octavia RS or a Golf GTI or a Golf R. It's kind of its own thing, and it's a good platform, as we know from almost everything we test on MQB. There's a high level of rigidity here, there's a high level of capability, and this sort of fluid lusciousness to the control surfaces, as well as a few foibles, but we'll get to those in a moment. Let's talk about what's under the bonnet, because that's where it gets interesting for me. We know that the two variants under close consideration by Cupra Australia are the plug-in hybrid, which I'm driving right now, and also the top spec all-wheel drive 221 kilowatt version, which I've spent a lot of time in. I'm going to talk about both. I'm going to start with the hybrid though, because it's just so good. This is one of these family cars where you start to think, gee, you can almost have it all here, because you've got sporting handling, strong performance even on a depleted battery, good fuel economy on a depleted battery, and decent electric range if you engage with it and you charge it. So the actual package is a 1.4 litre turbo petrol 4-cylinder engine paired with an 85 kilowatt electric motor. The combined output that the system is capable of is 180 kilowatts, and the combined torque is 400 Newton meters. So it's a decent amount of shove in the system, and that's the way it feels out here on the road. Now, when you do have a fully charged battery, the 0 to 100 km/h sprint took us just over 6 seconds in the hatch, so the wagon won't be far behind. But even once you've exhausted the electric range of the car, it's constantly topping up the battery by small increments and then deploying them out of corners like this, or to overtake or accelerate away from a stop. So it never feels like a slouch. And the plug-in hybrid uses a 6-speed wet clutch DSG, which actually has the electric motor embedded in it, and this is one of the best plug-in hybrid drivetrains out there. A lot of plug-in hybrids are actually a bit rubbish to drive, not very smooth. You know, there's weird stuff going on with the powertrain. This car is fun. Not the case with the Leon. It's a really well sorted, smooth plug-in hybrid. And then, even on a depleted battery, it'll give you 5.6 litres per 100 Ks as tested, which is absolutely phenomenal, and that's half the fuel consumption of what you'd get in similar situation with the VZX, the 221 kilowatt. So that engine is extremely strong. No doubt it's the faster car when compared to the hybrid. 221 kilowatts of power, 400 Newton meters of torque, and all-wheel drive means it's got really good traction. It's by far the easiest Leon to launch if 0 to 100 times are your thing, and it feels very, very strong. What it isn't is a direct replacement for the Golf R. The Golf R wagon, which had 235 kilowatts of power, a newer gen motor, a new gen all-wheel drive system with drift mode, it was a much more hardcore vehicle than what the Leon Sportstourer 221 kilowatt is like. The Leon 221 kilowatt is always quick. It's very, very capable indeed, but it's got a softer edge to it than a Golf R. It's more akin to a Golf GTI. If they made a GTI wagon with a bit more power and all-wheel drive, I know that sounds like an R, but it's not. It's got a softer edge, and I think a lot of people will like that. It rides quite well. You can definitely tell what's happening on the road, but the exhaust has these nice crackles and pops, which you don't get with the plug-in hybrid. But I'm just not sure that the 221 kilowatt is quick enough, is hard-edged enough to justify the fuel economy, which can be quite significant actually. Like on a mountain pass, I got 14 litres per 100 Ks, which is quite a lot of fuel being used, especially over here in Europe. With the plug-in hybrid, you know, using half that amount and still delivering really pleasant levels of performance and some fun handling, I think I'd probably go the plug-in hybrid. Speaking of the handling, the Leon is its own beast in this kind of territory. It doesn't handle like a Golf or an Octavia, particularly the steering, which has a very unique tune. It's like very fast steering, almost video gamey. There's a small amount of road feel, but I find that the steering ratio in the rack is quite intuitive. It's a really easy wagon to use to string together corners on a back road. And I think if you're watching this video, if you're considering a wagon as your family car, it's probably because you are looking for something that's going to be more interactive and fun to drive than an SUV. And in either of these Leon wagon variants, that's exactly what you're getting from this car. It's more fun, it's more stable, it's flatter, it's lower to the ground, and it's happy to just play with you on a road like this. You can adjust the rear end. You can't really slide the all-wheel drive model on the throttle, but you can really adjust the car quite delicately as you are traversing a road like this, and it's lovely. Ride quality, we've got the 15-stage adaptive dampers, the latest Volkswagen Group adaptive damper, and they work very well here. I actually found it was easier to find a setting that I liked in the hybrid, which would have a different suspension tune because it's got weight in different places. I think it rides a bit better than the 221 kilowatt all-wheel drive, but neither of them are poor. I think the Golf R wagon probably rode a bit better again than these cars, but you know, it's so much of a muchness that it rides well. Refinement, decent. Quite a bit of tyre noise in these cars, as is the case with every Leon that we test. And I do want to give a shout out to the relative efficiency of the plug-in hybrid when it's in full EV mode. We've got a 10.4 kilowatt hour usable battery here. That's a pretty small battery, but I was able to eke out 50 kilometers driving it relatively gently, like how you would if you were commuting. And that's consumption of 21 kilowatt hours per 100 Ks, which would be kind of bad for an EV, but it's pretty good for a plug-in hybrid. And then, as I mentioned, even when the battery's depleted, you're still getting really good fuel economy. Safety, adaptive cruise, strong lane keep, blind spot monitoring, but no 360-degree camera. And in a relatively long vehicle like this, that really does help. So that's a first look at the Cupra Leon Sportstourer. Look, we're never going to say no to a new fast wagon coming to Australia, but especially when it's as talented and capable as this one. But I've got a bit of an unusual recommendation from my perspective, and that's that I think you should actually go for the plug-in hybrid if Cupra ends up bringing both of these models to Australia. The 221 kilowatt all-wheel drive Leon, probably called VZX, is still a super awesome car. It is fast, it is punchy, and it's got plenty of traction, but it's thirsty and it's not quite as good as the Golf R estate once was. But the plug-in hybrid offers something quite new and quite different. It's still got a talented chassis, it's still very fun to drive and quick, but even on a flat battery, it's super efficient. And then you can charge it and get 50 Ks of electric range out of it. So if that can land maybe just under 70 grand drive away, I reckon that would be a very compelling family buy. Please let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. While you're there, hit subscribe and the notification bell. And as always, thank you for watching Chasing Cars.